Hello and good evening and welcome to Career Conversations. My name is Richard Rutha. I am Digital Content Manager for Career Connect with the APH Connect Center. Today is our 10th Career Conversations with Mr. Joe Strechay. And we are pleased to have him with us for the next hour. And we will have our host, Lori Scharf, who also works for the Connect Center and Career Connect, in talking to Joe and engaging with him. And in about 20 minutes, we will take questions from the audience. So as you think of what you want to ask Joe, go ahead and put that in the chat. And we will put reminders in the chat. And then Katie who is with us as well. Thank you, Katie. Will also be looking at those chats and categorizing those questions. So without further ado, again, welcome to Career Conversations. Welcome, Joe. And Lori, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody. And I would like to welcome everybody to the Career Conversations this month. And I would really like to thank Joe Strechay for joining us. Joe, as many of you know from reading the blog that we have regarding this webinar, has a rather unique career of working with TV and film on helping people who are actors to portray people who are blind accurately in TV and film. So Joe, if you could tell us a little bit about your job in this area and how you got started, that'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lori and Richard. It's a great pleasure to be on this, the Connect Center, the American Printing House for the Blind, also Career Connect mean a lot to me. So I got started in film working with actually with like commercials and documentaries and stuff like that, just connecting them to persons who are blind or low vision around the US and abroad. So working with them to connect with people, they were looking for someone for a commercial who's blind. Then I got contacted by a writer's room for a USA Network show called Royal Pains. And I worked with them on 3 episodes regarding their scripts and the language they were using and the slang I use in my everyday life. And it was kind of like a cool little hobby thing. And I'm like, okay, that's neat. But eventually Marvel's Daredevil came to me and I created first the job description and helped recruit people for the role and to work with them and work with the actors and such. And my first question was always, is the actor blind or low vision? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. So, and that's before I even knew it was Marvel's Daredevil. They wouldn't let me say the word Daredevil until it was mentioned after I'd done all the work on the show, until Charlie Cox mentioned it on Late Night with Seth Meyers, speaking about our work together. But I started off being passionate about the portrayal, but like how I see myself in television and film, and I'm really passionate about television and film in general. I worked at a video store, like it's kind of like Netflix, but it's a building that you go into, and there would be movies on a wall. And if there was no tape, I know this tape thing is a hard concept too, behind the box, then it wasn't there. Then you had to come back to the store to get that movie. So
Some of us
like
remember
Netflix,
those days.
yeah. So I started working on Marvel's Daredevil, but my work has progressed over the years. So I also create accessibility for actors who are blind or low vision. So like I'll get to talk more about this down the line in the future, but All the Light We Cannot See was a lead actor who's blind and a child version who's legally blind for that. And I can't really go into that too much, but on See as well, on Apple TV Plus, you'll find we had about, I think it was 12 actors or so, 11 or 12 actors in season 1 who were blind or low vision, and 2 stunt performers who were blind, and 1 was deaf-blind. And then in the following seasons, we had ended up at 35 actors who were blind or low vision over 3 seasons. So creating the accessibility for the production, helping them learn the film process because a lot of these people didn't have a lot of acting experience. And if they've acted, they was probably in community theater. So it wasn't in a major television or film. So that's how I got started, but it's also kind of how my work progressed.
Okay. And since you did kind of touch on this, could you tell us a little about the differences of working with actors who are blind versus actors who are sighted and maybe portraying somebody who is blind or low
Definitely.
vision?
So my master's degree is around teaching children who are blind or visually impaired, orientation and mobility. So teaching people how to use the white cane and travel, and a specialty in transition from school to work. But prior to that, my undergraduate from East Carolina University is around communication and media. And I would say my work combines all those things. But when working with actors with sight or actors who are blind or low vision, each actor learns differently in what they're doing and prepares differently for their work, whether it's Charlie Cox, Britt Marling, Jason Momoa, whether it's Brie Klauser, whether it's many other actors who are blind or low vision or sighted. But it's reaching them where they are. And a lot, I would say the majority of the actors I've come across, we had a mix of actors who were totally blind, low vision, and I would say more common though is low vision. And often those individuals who are low vision don't often have the blindness compensatory skills. Like the basic, they haven't been taught them. They have spent most of their life relying on their vision. And so I often have to train them in some of those skills as well, and those basic skills and what we're doing. And then also like for a show like See, where it's a show that's in the future, it's an alternate future after a crazy idea, a pandemic happens, this virus comes,
Who
kills
knew?
off the majority. I know, seriously, we were ahead of the game, 2018, launched in
Yep.
2019, but majority of the population gets killed off, and we're down to like 2 million people in the world, and of those 2 million people, they're all blind. And then our show takes place a few hundred years later, after little societies and different groups have developed and different strategies. So these weren't people who are blind most likely originally, but they had to learn these skills kind of as they were going over years and years. So it's a different culture. So eye contact is a social, cultural, and visual norm. So depending where you are in the world, depends on how eye contact is used. Often with a child who's totally blind, we might teach them about eye contact. I have also worked with young people. I've worked with thousands of people who are blind or low vision and training them in all kinds of skills. But when going into a place of employment, about eye contact and trying to portray eye contact or could fit into that norm. But in a world where everyone's blind, that norm disappears. And you get to play with a lot of things. And I got to work with a team. And so for season 2 and 3, I saw this movement team of choreographers where we built out the culture. It wasn't just me. It's all these actors who are blind or low vision helping to build this world and paint that world. So it's just not my expertise. And I reached out to friends who are blind or low vision all over the world. So when Jason Momoa was climbing a cliff face, I did pretty much everything our actors did on set. I did myself as a person who's totally blind. And but when Jason Momoa is climbing, he used videos that Eric Weinmeier, who summited Mount Everest and the highest peak on each continent, provided for us, because he's a mentor, a friend, and I reach out to all my connections when I need help.
So can you talk a little about how you, as a person who is totally blind, is able to get feedback on what either a blind actor or a sighted actor portraying somebody who's blind, how accurate their body movement and their, say, cane technique would be, in a particular scene? How do you make sure that that's as accurate as possible?
That's a wonderful question. And that is definitely part of my job. It's not just that, but also for the actors who are blind or low vision, maybe the thing, their technique they're using to find something or is not shown in the camera frame, like the
Hmm.
frame of within the screen. So I have to be there to make sure those details and that story is told. Um, so I have a choreographer who audio describes every movement. So I go into, and I work on all the scripts on my shows. I work with props and set deck and all these different departments. I'm a producer. I was co-executive producer for season 3,
Right.
co-producer for season 2, all this. So my hands are in everything, but I make sure for every scene I have these action lists, these specific lists looking at all the actions in every scene, thinking about what could be done, what we might see, but then I help block every scene with the director. So for season 2 and 3, most of that was with Anders Edstrom, who also uh, they just finished filming Percy Jackson up in British Columbia. Um, we would block and meet with all the actors, read through the scene, and then we would figure out what the actors are doing. And I have to you know figure out, work with the actors and the people, and they might have ideas, and I might have ideas, and we talk about what we're going to do. The director might have ideas, and we all figure out what that scene is going to be. Then and I have my assistant is audio describing all their movements to me, their little details, the littlest thing, like how I care so much about the details because I think that's what paints the picture. And
Yes.
so every take in our show is audio described for me. Like, and we don't move on until I say it's good. I have a hoodie that says, see on the top, it says good for movement. And then underneath it says copy, good for movement, because I have to, or my team, we would have to approve every take or every scene shot to make sure before we move to another shot, make sure it was right, make sure it was respected. Because number one on every production I work on is that disability and blindness have to be respected. So like on C, it didn't stop at blindness. We brought on actors
Hmm.
and background performers with cerebral palsy, short of stature, people who utilize a prosthetic leg, all kinds of different disabilities, because it helps to paint that world. We had an actor with ALS, and I got to help create accessibility, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, and figure all that out with the production and with the team, and make a beautiful story. And I get to do that on the other productions I go on to and continue to work on.
So when you say the person provides you with audio description, is that done into like an earpiece so you're not interfering with sound on the set or anything like that?
We're just off the set. We're like, so the
Ah, okay.
producers
So
sitting.
you're out of earshot, eye shot, so to speak.
Sometimes I'm a little too close, but I'm either with the director, standing right with the director, or with the executive producers like the
Hmm.
showrunner. And
Right, right.
we have monitors, and sometimes we have 3 cameras, so we have 3 different, and
Angles,
we
yeah.
have to pick what is the most important, and we go through and they do replay for us. We
Hmm.
might be like, wait, could we get that again and see it? But yeah, the person is whispering in my ear, like just whispering in my ear, because time is of the essence. And when
Yes,
you're
yeah.
dealing with like millions of dollars, so like
Time is money.
season one of C cost about $150 million. Um, every take is like $25,000 or more,
Wow.
and you want, so there's a lot of pressure to make sure you get it right, and you don't want to keep going on, and so you want to make sure you get in there, make the notes, and I talk to the director and then the actor, and depending on the types of notes, depends on whether I go straight to the actor.
Mhm. Okay. And what are some essential skills that you feel are necessary for doing your job?
I think
Whether that be assistive technology or
I I'm a huge Apple user. I use all kinds of Apple products. It was like heaven working for Apple on Apple TV Plus because of my access to devices, and they didn't give me devices, but I might have been able to get a friendly discount here and there. So, but I use a lot of Apple products. I have I have a backpack that looks like a hiking bag. It is a hiking bag, and we film mostly outdoors, but I have all kinds of technology in there because you never know what you're going to need. And I back up and I power battery packs and all kinds of things. So I use VoiceOver. I use, JAWS on a computer. I can use a Mac as well. I use screen readers, and I would say the iPhone has become like a pocket knife. Like I can use it for so many things. I can take notes on it. I have a QWERTY keyboard, that a Bluetooth that I keep with me as well. I use my cane. I have different colored canes right now. My favorite one is a pink one. My cane's nickname is Slim because he's skinnier than me, or he or she, they is skinnier than me. And I have all kinds of colors though. I love having a little color in my life. So it's fun to play with. But all these things allow me to do my job, but also the time I spent training people who are blind as well, and then just living it every day. Prior to me doing this work, most of the people who did work like me were sighted folks, and I feel lucky to be able to do what I do. But also the actors we work with who are blind or low vision, going on. Shayla Brown, she's from Toronto. She was on C just as a day player. She ended up now nailing a principal role in Women Talking. It's getting Oscar talk right now. So check that out. She's an amazing young actress. She's now 19. I helped cast her at 17. So the showrunner for our show and myself cast every role from season 2 and 3 together. Him and I had the deciding factor on who got roles, whether it was a sighted character, a blind character, whether it was a stunt performer. And if people don't respect what we do, then they shouldn't be working with us. So we're not afraid to cut people too. And it's been a great and positive experience.
Okay. And what do you what will you be doing going forward, or what are some thoughts you have on continuing to promote yourself? Like what would be some things that you would do to promote yourself?
Well, in my work, I'm currently working on a project that I can't name at the moment, remotely. It might involve the animation. I'm also I do some consulting work in the disability inclusion world with Disability In, disabilityin.org, working with corporations and businesses. I've worked with Scholastic on a children's book series. I worked with them on one of the books. The series is called Dragon Masters, and I worked with the author on the language used, but also the illustrations, which is, I guess, surprising, but also led to my more and more work. And I helped to design like the movements for our show. So I guess that kind of, and I have to approve all the visual effects in C, and got to work with those folks to help determine how graphic people were moving around and connecting and doing things in the world when we don't have real actors and performers doing it. But I want to continue working in film, and I'm going to produce projects. I'm going to also, I hope to have my own projects in the future. I hope to be a showrunner and, be booking actors who are blind or low vision out there in the world. And I do speaking engagements. I just spent a week down in South Carolina going from school to school, going to general education schools and the School for the Deaf and Blind, deaf or blind. I spoke to 400 sixth graders at one point for like an hour and a half. Then an hour later, I spoke to a smaller group, and I spoke to visual effects students in a high school who were not blind or low vision. And then I spoke to students who were blind, and then I spoke to students who were deaf. I'm just putting myself out there and making sure. Yeah,
you've really diversified yourself, and you're working, you continue to work at marketing yourself, which is fabulous. My last question that I have for you, and then we're going to turn it over to Richard and Lee for questions that they may have. What is some advice that you would give to somebody wishing to enter the field of TV or film?
I would say put yourself out there. Start writing and practicing your art, whether it's acting or writing, filmmaking, making your own projects starting out. Do whatever you can and start auditioning. Take classes, and there's something called Access Acting Academy. Mary Lee Talkington, who was on season 1 of C, helped to create that with a partnership and funds from Apple. And that program is a great program. There's so many opportunities. Actors have gone through just community colleges. This guy out of Vancouver Island spent 2 years in a community college taking a class here and there as a hobby around acting. You put yourself out there, keep trying, and don't expect Alfre Woodard, who's this famous actor, who's a friend of mine. She said, often people think that and want to be that person in like the $1 million films. Most actors are not that. Actually, if you look at statistics, I think SAG said a few years ago, the Screen Actors Guild, that 94% of professional actors are not making their living from acting. So most people, put yourself in community theater, put yourself in anything and everything. Practice your craft. Yeah.
Great answer. Okay, so we're going to turn it over to Richard and Lee from the Connect Center first, and then we're going to move on to some Q&A from the audience. So get those questions going in the chat still. So Richard?
Thank you, Lori, and such a great interview. And Joe, again, welcome to the Career Conversation stage. The one question I kind of want to dig a little deeper on, and then maybe Lee will have a question before we go to the chat, is of all the blind actresses and actors that you have met and have worked with or are working with, what do you think what was it for them that made it for them to be where they're at now? Like, of all the people who are actors and actresses who are blind, why have they succeeded?
I'm going to tell you that majority of them is a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of practice, a lot of auditioning, all the above. And maybe not everyone is Arya, who's the lead in Netflix's All the Light We Cannot See. She had done a little acting as a child, just the tiniest bit in a community theater at a young age. But most people are not that. She's brilliant in general, and you'll hear about her more in the future. But I look at Shayla. She was doing her school theater. She was doing a regional community theater, and just practicing the art and learning as much as she can. I look at others who just weren't afraid to put themselves out there too, because not all actors have that professional training. Yeah. But if you're interested, it's smart to learn the tools that can allow you and give you flexibility, but also just don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Good, and thank you. And I'll hand it off to Mr. Lee Huffman. Lee.
Hey, Joe.
What up, brother?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Oh, it's a pleasure, brother. It's a pleasure to hear your voice.
Thanks. I have two questions for you. Richard said one, but I'm going to go with two. So obviously from your background, you have spanned the gamut as far as careers go. You have worked in teaching, you've worked in the nonprofit world. You have obviously, as you've described this evening, worked in the entertainment business. That is a lot of different types of work. What would you say are, for the students who are listening, what are the three top most important skills that you have found that have stayed the same as like the most needed skills throughout all of your work? What skills do you think are the absolute most important for students who may be listening who are blind or low vision?
I would tell you that for my success, I think having that orientation mobility skills to go to work. And I always say, become comfortable with being uncomfortable, whether it's travel or like in situations, learning new technology. I love technology. I'm not the best technologist, but I put myself out there and I try new tech and I play with it and I try to see how it works and how I can make it work for me. I would say travel, technology, not being afraid to put yourself out there, taking risks. I believe in taking measured risks in life. So all those things put together have really opened up. And I take advantage of those skills and the training that your professionals, whether you're a teacher or visually impaired, whether orientation mobility instructor, vision rehabilitation therapist or teacher, all these professionals, assistive technology professional, instructor, all these professionals play a role, because if I didn't have those skills, I wouldn't be successful. Showing up on time, being there. I show up early and I stay late. No matter what job I've worked, I put in my time and effort, and I prove myself every day. And I go into a workplace where most people are not blind or low vision, and and most of these people haven't met someone who's blind or low vision unless it's their grandmother. So in all these places, I have to go and prove myself to them and demonstrate my competence and what I can do and what I can bring to the company, the business, whatever it is.
Just from being around you over a series of years and seeing you in different situations, what I know that you are very good at is, you just mentioned, being around people who are not blind or visually impaired, who haven't been around someone who is. You are very good at putting them at ease very quickly in an initial meeting with somebody. So that's one thing I think is very important that you do very well.
That's great point. And really the employment process is about creating trust between you and other people. They're not, an employer's not going to hire someone they don't trust or feel comfortable with. Yeah.
And so my last question for you, so that we can move on to other questions and answers, is we've been talking about all the things, for the most part, in the entertainment industry that is happening in front of the camera with actors. When people want to get into the entertainment business, you think of the high paid in front of the camera actors. What are some behind the scenes careers that you think it might be important for students to think about if they want to get into the entertainment business? What are some behind the scenes careers you think would be important to consider?
Great question, Lee. So entertainment business and the film business is a whole ecosystem of jobs. And I'll tell you, jobs I didn't even know existed. At a film set, when I worked on Marvel's Daredevil, we'd have a set, we'd probably have 160 people on set that working, not in front of the camera, behind the camera, doing moving things, putting up lights, working, turning on lights, someone working a computer to replay things, playback, that's called, people doing sound, making sure the sound's right, people doing the boom mic, people putting the microphones on. They also most people start out as like a PA or a production assistant, which means long hours and kind of being like an intern, but you're paid well, and it really gets to be well because often there's overtime, and that's where it really pays off. But and then you move into these union jobs, and we have transport, people driving around, and most people who are blind or low vision are not going to be those drivers, but there are all kinds of other roles out there, and they're businesses. So if you want to work in film and entertainment, there's also the business side. We have accountants, we have people doing payroll, we have people doing costumes, designing the costumes, sewing the costumes, buyers who are searching out items online, going to random stores and looking in vintage stores for stuff. There are so many jobs, people creating the props, I have a sword behind me here. I'm pulling out a Travantian sword. It's not sharp, it's fake. But this was used for season 2 and 3 of our show. But they create these all these items that the actors are holding. There's people who are creating the set, doing the construction part of it, building like houses inside of buildings, or building the inside of a house outside. They're building all kinds of things. We had spent like $10 million on a small, on 2 different towns or cities in C, but it was like going to Harry Potter World every Harry Potter World every day. Yeah.
Great. Hey, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lori to continue with the question and answer phase.
Okay, and I think we're going to turn it to Katie for questions from the chat.
All right. Well, this is fascinating. I'm really enjoying this. But let's get to some of the great questions that we have. So first of all, we have a really good question here. Wondering what your thoughts are about sighted actors playing blind roles when there are many blind actors who continue to, be unemployed because of blindness. Do you think that blind actors should be given priority in hiring when possible over sighted actors?
I
And
can tell you.
sorry, as a kind of a follow-up
No,
to
keep
that, what
going.
are your thoughts on sighted actors playing blind roles? So let's start with those.
Okay. So my undergraduate in communications and media, we studied the impact or media effects. And there was a study originally done in 1969 that's been replicated for different population. It talks about the migration of minority populations into media, like television and film. And there's a process. First level is non-representation. Level 2 is comedic, like making often the butt of jokes or being made fun of or whatever. Level 3 is regulatory or authority. So providing them with jobs on a show, like as a lawyer, judge, police officer, something that gives them authority and gives them some kind of validity, I guess. And then the last level is full range of jobs and a full range of parts. Like it's not even defined by blindness or disability. And if you look at groups like LGBTQ plus or LGBTQI plus population, which this study had been also replicated around, there's still, this process is ongoing. I'm waving my hand back and forth because there are parts that are LGBTQI plus that are portrayed by people who are not that. And, I think it's a process and we're, I think, late to the game, the disability group in general. And I think we're making a lot of progress recently in the last number of years. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. And I think ultimately it would be great if we had all these actors who are blind or low vision in all these roles. But often studios are looking for big names too. There's money associated to those parts, but you also have to find the right person for that part. I got to cast all those roles in season 2 and 3. We would have, in every round, we had people who are blind or low vision, and they always made it to the final round. We made sure that we always saw them for every part, but they weren't always right for the part. Their reading on that audition wasn't right for the part, and we might send them back and ask them to read again, and maybe it still wasn't right. But that doesn't mean they weren't meant for another part, or maybe everyone has a bad audition. 99% of auditions for actors they don't get. So I would say we're not there yet, but I have no issue because I see it as a process, and I want to make sure it's blindness and disability respected. And if I can help it to be respected, but if I can also help within the system, because the people I work with, whether the producers, so my friends Dan Schatz and John Steinberg, went from season 1 of C, they left C after season 1. They were the showrunners, and they went to create their own show called The Old Man with Jeff Bridges, John Lithgow. They both nominated for a Golden Globe right now. But they took one of the actors who's low vision, legally blind, Jessica Harper, and they built a part. They had a part, and they built it around her, adjusted it, and then and it has nothing to do with her vision. Really, it's about her acting and her as John Lithgow's wife. And then also they took another one of our friends, Ken Mitchell. He's an actor with ALS, and they built a part around them, and they actually named the part after me. His name is Joe. And but I think the people I get to work with, whether it's Francis Lawrence, all these people go on to work with on other projects, and they also see the opportunity to bring on actors who are blind or low vision or actors with disabilities. And I think that's the success that we're really making. It's not going to happen overnight, so I want to change it from within.
And I think you're really planting the seed at helping them to understand that, yes, people who are blind or low vision can act, and it doesn't always have to be in a role related to blindness or low vision, which is
100%.
fabulous.
And those same showrunners, their first show was called Jericho, and they were casting a part, and this female who was deaf came in and auditioned, and we were like, it doesn't fit the role, but they changed the role to fit her, and that was their first show, and I feel lucky, like I can work with people like them, and Jonathan Tropper, who was the showrunner for season 2 and 3, who go on to other projects, and it's such a small world, and if we can prove ourselves and show how we can do work, I'm brought onto projects not just around blindness. I offer input on disability and other things in the scripts and in the writing and what they're doing. And I also help studios around accessibility. So I think it's happening. It's going to take some time. And a lot of actors have been discouraged from getting training professionally as people who are blind or low vision. Vocational rehabilitation agencies didn't always support that. You look at the labor market information for acting, it's not one of the highest opportunities for getting a job. Yeah.
Okay, Katie, do we have another question?
I think we might. Yes, we have several questions, and they're great questions. So keep them coming. But I do want to give a special shout out. We have 13 students here from Perkins who are
fabulous.
listening and watching, and they have a question. But they also say thank you for all your hard work and for breaking into this industry. But the question is that some of the students from Perkins want to know is, how do you know what angles to film, and how do visually impaired actors know where the cameras are?
Great question.
Good questions.
I love it. Okay. So that's stuff I help out with. Like we work with the actors, whether if they've never been on a film set, training them on how the film set works, and like what the language and lingo we use on set, where the camera is going to be, what it shows, a medium shot, like half the body versus a full shot where you get the whole body, or a wide shot, or a crane shot, or all these things, training them on what it means. And then we describe it. And we also make sounds by the camera. We get to let them know where the camera is when we're filming. If the camera is going to move, we show them where it's going to be moving and how it's going to be moving, and let them understand that. We also bring the actors, in the beginning, we bring them to set early and let them explore a little bit. But truthfully, once actors who are blind or low vision end up walking the set a little bit, and all actors use markers at times on set to first mark and last mark. First mark is where you start, last mark is where you end. So we can have these, they call them sausage marks. They're like more tactile, and they can be in different colors as well. So if people have contrast, I also have costumers build out things so that they can have their sunglasses in their bag or in a pocket if they need it, like in between takes, if it's bright outside. I customize and make sure the cane, the staff or cane or whatever the show it is, works for the individual too, in reality, because it's not just a prop, it's also a real tool they have to use. But yeah, camera angles, I studied and I worked with these directors and learned and asked questions. By the end, on like C, I was, Anders would tell you, the director of most of season 2 and 3, that I was giving suggestions on types of camera shots that we could do. There's this one scene in the specific bombing where we were going for the blocking, and we were looking at the space and listening and listening and to the sound and what would be seen. And I said, it would be really cool to have a crane shot and pull back and then have a drone shot later on of all the aftermath and put it all together, showing the whole town. And we ended up doing that. We weren't going to, but then we did it, and it's in the show. You know, I have learned a lot about camera angles and shots and stuff, and what's in camera and out of camera. And I've helped train other people, sighted people, on that language and what it means, like panning versus, you know, like panning, tracking, all these things. What a focus puller is, you know, who moves the focus from the camera. It's not the actual camera. It's like a guy with an iPad, and he's moving the focus of the camera. He's flicking it with his finger. Yeah.
Interesting.
All
Okay,
right.
Katie.
Well, you touched on this a little bit when you were talking about the camera angles. So we have a comment and a question that
Mhm.
it seems like that in a lot of movies, when people are using a white cane, it's too short. It's maybe at their waist level. Does that have something to do with the camera view or the angle? Because that's, you know,
What I'm going to tell
oftentimes.
you, and that's not the shows I've worked on, because like Britt Marling on the OA is using my canes, which probably she's about my height actually, pretty close. And but I would tell you, my guess is that the actor thought it was too heavy for them, the longer cane, and they wanted a shorter one because of the weight. Because people who are sighted don't use a cane all the time, so they're not used to that weight and movement in their hand. Yeah.
And they don't have the muscle development.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
Unfortunately, his
Yeah.
the comment was that it's unfortunately, you know, sighted people then think, oh, that, you know, people who losing their vision need a short cane, and so that can cause some
Yeah.
issues.
My
So
cane goes up to probably above my nose, like somewhere around the tip
Mm.
of my nose. Yeah.
all right.
Cool.
Do you have any advice for teachers of students with visual impairments to inspire or connect students who have an interest in writing scripts or other entertainment industry careers?
Yeah, there are people, all kinds of people out there. Adam Morris is a legally blind director, filmmaker, and actor out of the UK. Great guy, friend of mine. He was in season 2, but he's also created his own films. I think one's called Lucid. You can find it on iTunes. There are other people like Sheridan O'Donnell out in LA. He just made a film, a feature film. He's a guy who's legally blind, losing his vision. He directed it, wrote it, and directed it. Lots of people just practice writing. And my friends who are writers would tell you, write at least 30 minutes a day, just write. Work on scripts, and it doesn't have to be the same script every day, but every day, write for at least 30 minutes and put yourself out there and just keep practicing. Yeah.
Great.
I also know composers who are blind or low vision. I know, you know, there are all kinds of people in the film industry out there behind the camera too. So, yeah.
What about film scorers?
Oh, so composers. Stephen Letness. I'm going to say his last. He's going to. Oops. Stephen. He was on Career Connect, I think, for APH when the graduation. But he's composed, done the composition for an Emmy-winning show. He is out of Minnesota. It splits time between Minneapolis and LA. He's a composer. There's a blind composer out of Turkey. In C for the composition, we had an instrumentalists who are blind as well that were provided music for us. You know, I think there are tons out there, and more. And if you watch, what is it? I helped with a little bit with the Rising Phoenix, the Olympics documentary, just giving advice on accommodations and stuff like that, and technology and things. And their score, I think their lead song is some I think they call it crip rap or crip pop or something like that. But there's music by persons who are blind and other disabilities. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you know are there agents in the US that specifically work with people who are blind or low vision?
There
Actors?
are. There's some Gail Williams. She's worked with a number of, but there's also there's a management company, C Talent. It's called not SEE like the show C, but founded by Keely Wells, and she is an amazing person. She founded and just sold it, but she's still working with the company. But they have a number of actors, all kinds of talents of people who are blind or low vision, but other disabilities too. Yeah, I think there are more and more, and you don't have to be pigeonholed to one agency. Sheila Brown is, and this young woman, Ali Hand, who I helped cast for an Amazon show that's on Amazon right now. They are with a place out of Toronto, Costas Entertainment. But I don't think you have to be limited by that. But there are people that are more open, for sure.
All right. Next, we have here someone who is a blind student in school for music composition, audio production, and sound design. They want to do either audio work or music composition for films, and they're getting to the point where they have the skills to start working in the field, but working on the confidence and the experience of working with others. So how have you improved? What are some ways that you've worked in these environments, when you started out to where you are now?
Oh, in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. I asked questions, and I would say even working on Marvel's Daredevil, I didn't know all the different departments on that show. I knew like set deck, I knew props, sound. I knew very specific ones, camera, costumes, but there were all these other departments I didn't know. But with sound, I would strongly suggest you connect with as many, make some realistic connections with people who are doing the work. They don't have to be persons with disabilities, and talk to them and interview them and ask them about how they're doing the work. See if there's opportunities to intern or get a part-time job or help out with stuff whether in the studio or on set. Some shows are all studio work too. So yeah, I would say put yourself out there and see what is possible, and don't be afraid to try to prove yourself. And we all fail, like every one of us. You can't name a successful person who hasn't failed many, many times. I've definitely failed. I make mistakes on set, and it's tough because as a person with a disability, we're often like, oh, if we make a mistake, we're gone or something like that. But it's not that case. And I've been very lucky in having mentors who are blind or low vision, but also mentors who are not. Now my mentors are showrunners and filmmakers and all kinds of stuff. And I'm very lucky. And so put yourself out there.
And also job shadowing. So even shadowing people who, like Joe was saying, who are not blind, will give you experience in understanding the field better. And, you could maybe, after you do some job shadowing, have a little conversation and just talk with the people people who you job shadow. And that's building your confidence in using your skills and understanding what's going on.
I would also suggest most filmmakers, people working on productions on the weekends, they're making their own short films or feature films or whatever. And I would put yourself out there and reach out to these people. They have no budget. And get experience. One of my old assistants, she helped produce a small feature film during the end of COVID. We had a time off because of COVID. And help produce that. I have friends who did on weekends, they make films, and offer your services to these types of productions. Often these people are going to end up being major filmmakers, or they might move on, but it also helps you practice your craft in a realistic format too. And just
And-
build your repertoire. Yeah.
And because you're still in school, you also could speak with your professors. They also may have
Mhm.
projects that they're working on where you could get
Sure.
some good experience.
Yep.
So Katie, why don't we move on to a new question?
All right. So we have a couple I'd love to get to if we can. One, do you know any youth actors who are blind?
Yeah, they're definitely. Well, Shayla was 17 when we started working together, but I've also worked with two 11-year-olds, a 7-year-old who are all blind. There's Abigail out of Toronto is a fantastic young actor. She's got to be, maybe she's 12 or 13 now, maybe 12, but she was amazing on C in season 3, and a very small part, but we added her to an extra scene or two because she was so good, and she was great on set and perfect. And then there was a girl in season 1, a young girl, and then you'll get to hear more about this other one in the future for Netflix. But yeah, I've worked with child actors who are blind or low vision. I've also helped them learn about film and how it works and what it's going to be like, and then the accessibility for them on set. Mm-hmm.
Great. And it sounds like you've mentioned some names that you've worked with a lot of famous people, but who would you say is someone that you haven't worked with, that you're like dreaming of working with? Who's like your ideal, co-star, as it were, or famous actor that you'd like to work with?
So my undergraduate was at East Carolina University. I would love to work with Sandra Bullock, but I did get contacted about Birdcage or Bird Box, not Birdcage. That's a good movie too, though. Bird Box, and I wasn't interested, but I didn't know it was Sandra Bullock, so I probably would have thought twice before saying no. She was on my list because she went to East Carolina. I've met a lot of famous people, and there only been a few that like made me like in awe, and I've met them briefly and stuff. And I would say Oprah Winfrey was one of them, but she's amazing, and I feel excited to, I would love to be on her show if she wants to invite me. So, put it out the word. You guys know Oprah. Yeah.
There you go.
She gives off good energy.
Yes.
She does. A nice handshake too. Double-handed handshake.
What
Good.
advice would you have for someone that wants to get into public speaking?
Practice. I would say public speaking, put yourself out there, practice. I wouldn't say I'm a traditional public speaker. I often speak passionately, get real excited, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, just like anything. So practice and outline what you're going to talk about, and then go from there. Yeah.
All right. And I know we have just a few minutes left, but someone's asking, is C a Netflix show, or how can they watch C?
Ooh, great question. So if you want to watch C and you're hopefully older, because it's pretty violent, it's on Apple TV Plus. So if you have an Apple product, you have Apple TV Plus, or you can get a free trial. I think right now Will Smith is paying for 2 months of a free trial for people with Apple products. So you can find it on 3 seasons on Apple TV Plus. Marvel's Daredevil was on Netflix. Now it's Disney Plus. The OA is on Netflix. All the Light We Cannot See will be on Netflix. There are others too, but yeah.
And All the Light You
Great.
Cannot See, that's not out yet as of December 2000.
No, it's not.
20,
It'll be
okay.
out sometime next year.
In 23.
Yeah.
Got it. One last one, Katie? Or are we?
I heard it.
Well,
Someone asked about animals, and I actually love animals. So in season 1, I pet so many animals: sheep, goats, horses. So kind of as a joke, on season 3, in my rider for my contract is you ask for what you want, like pay and everything. I got co-executive producer. I wanted to be able to pet every animal on set. So I got to pet, and they accepted it. So I got to pet
I love
every
it.
animal on set.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
There you go. That's if you don't ask, you don't get it, right? So there
Yeah,
you go.
exactly.
Well, Joe,
Okay.
we will hit the end of the recording in just a minute, but hang out with us for a minute. I
Yeah,
do want
for
to thank
sure.
everyone for viewing Career Conversations live. And as always, we do archive this within 2 weeks, and we have up to 10 up there right now, and it's a great resource for you students to hear from other blind and low vision people who are doing it, living it, and working it in the world. So check that out on our Connect Center webinar page on our YouTube channel. And I want to thank Lee, Lori, Olaya, Katie, everyone up here on stage to make today possible. And I see our own very own Paul Schrader in the audience. Hi there, Paul. We will hit end of the recording and we'll
Oh,
give out.
and
Go
you
ahead.
can find me on LinkedIn at Joe Strechay. So if you search Joe, Joe, Strechay, Strechay, you can find me.
And we put that in the chat as well. Everyone, thank you.
Yes.
Have a great afternoon. And I'm going to hit the end of the recording.